Whenever there is a new release out in theaters, I try my best to see it, but I don't always catch every single movie. And sometimes there's a weekend where there's two releases and I choose one over the other. And, for me at least, if I don't see the movie that weekend, it's not worth making a review. Some of these movies I actually did see in theaters, maybe like a week or two after its initial release, and didn't make a review. So I wanted to put together a video of 10 movies that I saw earlier throughout this year that I did not review, that I do still want to talk about, including Lion King, Midsommar, and a bunch of others. So I'm going to start with January, a couple of movies I missed in there, all the way up to now. July 22nd is when I'm recording this. So this is going to be my video of some movies that I missed. And if you guys have any questions, I'm going to spend a very brief amount of time on each of these movies. So if you have any questions or any expanded thoughts you want me to explain about any of these movies, make sure you guys comment below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of these type of videos, and also leave a like. So let's get started with the first movie, Fyre. Fyre was the Netflix documentary about the much maligned Fyre Festival, with Billy McFarland, running the whole thing, and Ja Rule, being as ridiculous as he is in that documentary, and all this whole crazy story about the Fyre Festival. If you don't know what the Fyre Festival was, it was basically this one of these music festival events that got really hyped up by a bunch of different influencers and rich people, Instagram models, and a bunch of different stuff that was supposed to be the greatest party of all time in an isolated, completely uninhabited island that they had to, do a bunch of remodeling for. And if you watch this documentary, you see how everything went wrong, and these people who were running it really just did not care at all. And I actually really, really enjoyed this documentary. I usually don't see too many per year, but last year I saw a couple. The Won't You Be My Neighbor was fantastic, and Three Identical Strangers was really good as well. And I think this Fyre Festival documentary was actually really solid. I did not see the one that Hulu made, but I did see this one. I wanted to see both of them. But this is the one that I ended up catching on Netflix. So if you guys have not seen this documentary, if you don't know what the Fyre Festival is, it's definitely worth checking out. It's a crazy, crazy story that is just ridiculous. This guy is kind of like an evil, manipulative genius, honestly. The way that he ran this whole thing, this whole scheme, and now he's in prison and all this stuff. It's a crazy story, so definitely go check out this documentary if you guys get a chance on Netflix. Next up is The Kid Who Would Be King, which was directed by Joe Cornish, who did Attack the Block, which kind of launched John Boyega's career, which, eventually he became Finn in the Star Wars movies. So, I did not actually see Attack the Block. I really want to see it. It's on one of my list of many movies to watch. But I did try to see The Kid Who Would Be King in theaters, and I actually got a chance a few weeks later. And you know what? I enjoyed the movie for what it was. For the Sword in the Stone story that we've heard and seen a million times. It does everything in a very, very fun way in a modern setting, which was actually probably the most interesting part about this movie. I think the kid actors did a fine job. It was a fun written movie, and it was very, very predictable, which is my biggest issue with this movie. The villain character, I thought they could have done a lot better, because they had Rebecca Ferguson from the Mission Impossible movies, and she is such a great actress. She just ended up being such a very bland villain. And light spoilers for the Sword in the Stone story, but her character gets killed and banished in the end, when they could have done something a lot more unique, where they could have, redeemed her in a way and try to do something different with the story instead of going the traditional route that you see with all these Sword in the Stone movies. So I do think it's worth checking out if it's on TV one day, or if you're showing your kids. It's obviously a great movie for kids. It's a lot of fun. I laughed, I enjoyed it, but it could have been a lot better for what it was. But Joe Cornish, he did a fine job as a director with that one. Jake Gyllenhaal, as you guys probably know, is my favorite actor. And when I heard that he was teaming up with his Nightcrawler director to do another movie, Velvet Buzzsaw, for Netflix, I was really, really excited for it. And you know what? I was so ridiculously let down. I did not like this movie. It was super pretentious, very, very confusing. I didn't understand the story, and I didn't care to look into it deeper. I watched it once. I never want to see it again. I don't remember much from it, but its cast was amazing. The performances were solid. And Jake Gyllenhaal is obviously the reason why I saw the movie, and he was definitely worth watching the movie. Just to see his performance as this weird, kooky art aficionado. And so he did a really good job. And Toni Collette's in this movie, obviously, from Hereditary, Midsommar, which I'll talk about later in this video. But the movie was just very, it's supposed to be a horror movie, which apparently it wasn't a horror movie. It's kind of a comedy, making fun of criticisms, and it ended up being very pretentious when I was trying to make fun of being pretentious. So I didn't really quite understand it. I never wanted to watch it again. I feel like if I did, I might enjoy it more. It just wasn't anything like I was expecting. Think of it more as a comedy than a horror. It's not taking itself too seriously. Think of it more of as a tongue-in-cheek movie. I think you might enjoy it more, but after an initial watch by me, I did not enjoy it too much. It is honestly one of my least favorites of the year. I wish it could have been a lot better. I was expecting a lot more from that director. Maybe Nightcrawler was a one-hit wonder, or maybe that director can do something great once again. I'm not a big anime or manga fan, so I wasn't too excited for Alita Battle Angel, but I was dragged to that movie by my cousin and my family to see it because obviously she was really excited about it, and I've been trying to see as much as I could at the year at that point. I've been struggling a little bit, but you know what? I'm trying to see everything, so I saw it, and I walked out of it kind of mixed on. I really enjoyed all the action sequences, and of course, all the visual effects that James Cameron kind of went nuts with in that movie. Although he didn't direct, he produced it. I thought it all looked visually just really great to see in theaters. So I'm happy I saw it then. But the main character, the main actress, her look and her face actually didn't take me out of the movie too much. Maybe the first 30 minutes was a little bit off, but besides that, I thought it worked pretty well. But what really bothered me about the movie is the entire storyline. It was so strange in this sporting event, this like skating thing, death match, whatever it was. I don't remember too much of it, obviously, because I saw it when it came out in theaters. So I'm struggling to remember the movie, which is a testament to how much I enjoyed it. But I did love all the action sequences, and the special effects was fun. And also, that boyfriend character dying twice is probably the greatest thing ever, because, he was just useless. And when he died, I was like, yes, they actually killed him. And then he came back, and then he died again. It's very conflicting. That movie was wild. I think they really focused on that event rather than, like, a high school teenage drama at some points with this guy character. That's the part of the movie that I didn't like. But when it was, really focusing on the main storyline and the plots, I was interested in it. And when the movie ended, I wanted to see more in this world. But I don't think it did well enough to have a sequel. But, if I can get another movie with, oh gosh, what's the actor that was at the end who was the villain? He played Hulk in The Incredible Hulk. I can't pull his name. But, I thought that was interesting stuff and I wanted to see more. But I doubt we'll ever see that again, sadly. Next up is a movie that I could have sworn that I reviewed when it came out, but I guess I didn't. Maybe my video was deleted off of YouTube, who knows, but it is Pet Sematary. And I watched Pet Sematary, the new version, and I watched the original right after because I hadn't seen both of them. I didn't know the story. And after walking out of it, I actually really, really enjoyed that movie. Although, its critical reception was actually strangely low, which I was actually surprised by. But the original one I thought was okay, but this new one I actually really enjoyed. And basically what I thought about the movie was that it was very well made and actually made a lot of sound effects. The entire sound design of that movie was extremely unsettling. I loved that entire aspect of the movie. I thought Jason Clarke did a good job, and all the acting is pretty good, and the wife did a fantastic job, and the kids, obviously, and the changes that they made from the book, I thought worked very well, especially having the daughter be the creepy kid towards the end of the movie. I actually really enjoyed how this movie played out, and I loved the ending. I thought it ended at a very strong point. Although you want to see more, but it left just about a hanging to not to be, confused like, oh, I don't know what happened, I didn't see enough, to being like, oh, I want more. So I thought it was actually a very well put together movie, but the problem I had with actually both the movies is the same, is the John Lithgow character in the new one. That character just made no sense to me. When you have this Pet Sematary and it's bad, why take anybody to that place after that point? They try to give it an explanation in the new one. The first one they didn't attempt at all. Made no sense. It was very frustrating. This new one also is very frustrating. They try to have like one line in it to try to explain it away, but it's still the entire turning point of the movie, which is why everything goes bad, is just such a dumb character decision. That's my biggest problem with this movie. The characters weren't necessarily the smartest, although the performances were solid. The actors do the best they can. I think that is the most frustrating part about the movie. But I thought it was actually really creepy and it's very well made. The production design, everything about it, I actually really enjoyed this movie. If you're a horror fan and you're a Pet Sematary fan, or if you're a Stephen King fan, check this movie out. It will unsettle you. The sound effect of the dumbwaiter is terrifying. The sound design is just excellent, which I thought I raved about this in a review, but I guess I didn't review it, so I'm putting it here. Go check out this movie. I actually really enjoyed it. And possibly one of my favorite films of the year so far, I did not review because I saw it after like 3 weeks of its release, which was frustrating. Thought, no reason to put a review out for that one. It is Booksmart, and I loved this movie, and a lot of people sold it to me with Superbad, but the female version of Superbad, and I think that gives this movie no justice at all. It is very, like, you can say the plot is fairly similar to Superbad, but it's really its own thing. It's not like a female version of that movie. Enough of that. Just make your own thing, and that's what this movie felt like. I thought it was very funny. It is a hysterical movie. The two lead actresses are fantastic, and I loved their chemistry, and it really felt like they lived in that world for, for their entire life. It felt like they had a lot of history together, and you felt like you were just a fly on the wall watching these two friends have an adventure at the very end of high school. It was a very funny movie, and Billie Lourd, who is Carrie Fisher's daughter in the movie, was amazing. I loved her in that role in that movie, and just, it is one of the funniest, most heartfelt, fun films of the entire year. And Olivia Wilde making her directorial debut with that one is very impressive, and I just go check out this movie, guys. I cannot rave about this movie enough. It is one of my favorites of the year so far. Definitely seek this one out if you get a chance. Buy it on Blu-ray, rent it, do whatever you can to see it. It is definitely worth it. And this is future Brad here to say that I forgot to talk about Rocketman, which is also another movie that I ended up missing a review for, and I can't believe I missed this one because I loved this movie. I was talking about Booksmart being one of my favorites of the year. Taron Egerton in Rocketman is probably my favorite performance so far. I loved this movie even more than I did with A Star Is Born and Bohemian Rhapsody. I absolutely adored this movie, and I thought what was most interesting about this movie is how they kind of use it as a musical rather than a normal biopic. This was a musical fantasy, which is how they pitched the movie, and I think that's the perfect way to describe how this movie is. I absolutely loved the uniqueness that this movie had, and honestly, it felt like this is a movie that only Elton John deserves. Out of every single singer artist ever, Elton John deserves a movie that is filmed and that is as stylized as this movie, and that is why I loved it so much. There's a few aspects of this movie where, especially towards the end, where it feels kind of like a music video, or you're just kind of montaging through his life using his songs, but at the beginning, it really does feel like you're just watching his story through the lyrics that he didn't even write, but it fits so perfectly with his life. And that is what I loved about this movie. This is also one of my favorites of the year, and I just couldn't go without talking about Rocketman and just give Taron Egerton an Oscar for this movie. He deserves it. Yesterday is a film where when I saw the trailer and I saw Danny Boyle's name on the film, I was extremely excited for the movie, especially with that premise of, everybody in the world forgets the Beatles even existed, except for this one guy who's a singer-songwriter, and, he decides to steal those songs and make it his own, and I actually really enjoyed this movie. I'm bummed that I missed it in theaters, but I was on vacation at the time, so I wasn't able to get a review out for that one, and I didn't see it until a couple days ago, so I finally got a chance to see it. I was very hyped for it, and I was not let down. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be, and Himesh Patel, who was the main actor in the movie, is incredible. His wide-eyed, joyous just performance in this movie is amazing. I think he's easily the best part of the film. And Lily James is also great in this movie. She, of course, is fantastic as usual, and the entire cast does a great job. But what this movie does really well is it's with its premise, it has a fun story, it has a great, learning, it's really a story about fame. And you wouldn't think that it would be about that, but that's really the direction it goes to, and it has this fun premise to kind of explore that story that we have, kind of seen and explored before, but it's in a very unique and funny situation that I think worked very well. There are a few things I didn't like about it. Obviously, there's one scene that really confused me. It's in the trailer, the James Corden scene. If you guys have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. It was very abrupt, didn't make sense, not explained at all, and I see what they're going for with it, but there's a lot of things like that where towards the last half of the movie, it kind of stumbles and it feels very off pace. And the first half is so strong, where the second half kind of seems either rushed in parts or it's dragged in parts, or you have that scene with James Corden that really has nothing to do with anything. It's kind of, you get to see inside the mindset of Himesh Patel's character, but it's not really necessary. It felt out of place. And now we are at Midsommar, which I was a huge fan of Hereditary when it came out last year. I don't think it quite cracked my top 10 list of that year, but, after thinking about it, it has one of the most disturbing and unsettling scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I walked out of this movie, honestly want to watch Hereditary more, because right after walking out of it, that tone and the feel and the way it's shot just reminded me so much of Hereditary, obviously the same director. And I think it is a very, very well directed film, very well shot. There are so many shots in Midsommar that is just stunning and beautiful. The cinematography is A+. There's a lot of weird, trippy, drug-inducing stuff in this movie that I think is very creative and unique to this movie, and I absolutely love that aspect of the movie. The filmmaking of this movie is great, whereas the story is very frustrating to me, to a point where, you know, a lot of people probably made explain videos for this movie. I didn't care to actually look up any of them because this movie just boggled my mind. I don't know. I need to look up more stuff about it. But it's just like I walked out of it not sure whether or not I liked the movie. So I didn't do a review for it because of that. And plus I saw it a little bit late. But I just don't know how I feel. I don't know if I like this movie, if I'm being completely honest. It just kind of unsettled me in the wrong ways, you know? You want the movie to unsettle you, to creep you out into making it that way. This movie unsettled me to a point where I didn't want to explore this movie ever again. I don't think I'll watch this movie ever again. I don't want to hear more about this movie. I think it's a very well-made piece of art, but as a film, as like an enjoyable theater experience, I would not, you know, maybe I would recommend it. Who knows if you have a different perspective on it. I thought it was wild. I just don't know what to think. You know, it's such a crazy, weird movie. And last but not least is The Lion King, which I missed its initial release. You know, I didn't see it in the first opening day, so I didn't find it worthy of reviewing just that movie alone, because obviously it's a shot-by-shot remake, if we're all being honest. We've all seen the movie before. What else can I add to the conversation, especially with the reviews coming out like 2 weeks ago? So let's do quick thoughts on the movie from me, which is kind of a more explain of why I think people are having issues with this movie. And I'm not saying I don't have issues with this movie. I actually had most of the same issues that critics are having, which is that this movie lacks the entire joy and emotion that the first movie had. Not completely, but it's not as vibrant. And what I mean vibrant, I don't just mean color, but in terms of like the emotions and the facial reactions that the lions had, especially a younger Simba in the animated version, was so alive. And this movie just felt, I don't want to say dull, but it wasn't as lively as the original. Obviously, you can do a lot more with animation, with the color, with the facial expressions of lions. And when you're trying to make a photorealistic Lion King movie, I think that really is the reason what bogs down this movie, for me especially, is all the lions just felt like their eyes didn't have any emotion at all. You know, they were completely stagnant, whereas the mouth was moving, and not even moving a lot. Like if you're yelling, you know, you kind of, you open your jaw and you drop it and you scream, right? In this movie, when any character was like yelling, any voice actors were yelling, the mouth of the lions moved the same distance as they were talking normally. So it didn't feel like the emotion of the voice acting, which is fantastic, by the way. The voice actors are not to blame in this at all, but it just doesn't feel like those lines are evoking those same emotions that the actors are. And I think that's the biggest issue with this movie, and plus maybe a little bit of the weird mind trick that your brain does on you, where you're seeing these lines speak like humans, and it just doesn't look right. I think that is the main issue with this movie. But even I watched The Jungle Book afterwards, and not the whole thing, but I watched some certain scenes, and those creatures, the animals in that movie, seem a lot more alive than The Lion King, which is very disappointing. But what I did enjoy about the movie, obviously, the special effects and I don't want to call it animation, but the CG work is incredible. This movie is gorgeous. It looks a lot better than The Jungle Book, which looked incredible to begin with. So the visuals of this movie is completely stunning, almost to a fault where it actually kind of ruins the movie. The movie is honestly too realistic for its own good. I think director Jon Favreau could have taken a little more creative liberty in making the lines look a little bit unrealistic in order to have that more emotional and lively look. So that is my thoughts on Lion King. That's my thoughts on all 10 of these movies. If you want to see me do another video like this, I feel like it went a lot longer than I wanted to, but I am passionate about movies. I wanted to talk about these 10 that I missed earlier this year that I didn't get to review. So if you want to see more videos just like this one, stuff that I saw that I didn't get a chance to review, if you have any thoughts on movies that is not on this list, you know, check out the channel, see if I reviewed it in the past. But if I didn't see, if you have any recommendations, make sure you comment below. Or if you have any thoughts to expand on anything that I've said, make sure you ask me. I will keep an eye on the comments on this video, and I'll be responding pretty much on anything. So thanks guys for watching this video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment, and tell me your thoughts. See you guys in my next review.